Okay, register. So if you're looking in the PowerPoint slides, we're on slide 15. There are 5 types of register. The first one we're going to talk about is frozen. Frozen text is anything that is something that everybody knows it's said a particular way, or in general that it's said a particular way. So some examples of that would be like the Star-Spangled Banner. Even though there are translations of the Bible, in general the Bible would be considered a frozen text. Shakespeare, Edgar Allan Poe, any kind of literature that's always recited a certain way, that would be any kind of poetry, those types of things, that would be frozen text. Frozen text is very, very difficult to interpret because sometimes there's implied meaning there, and that's true of any kind of interpretation, or double meaning, that especially in poetry, you know, they're trying to really give double meaning. And so it can be very, very difficult to interpret. The good thing about frozen text is very often you can get that to prep with ahead of time. And so that's one pro to doing the frozen text, I suppose. And frozen text comes up in a variety of settings. I mean, it can come up at church, it can come up in classrooms, it can come up at a baseball game, if you're doing the Star-Spangled Banner, it can come up just about anywhere. And so it's important to know that that is one of the registers that we have. It's something that shouldn't change, that the interpretation should be relatively the same every time that you do it. Now again though, language is not a one-to-one ratio, and henceforth again, like with the Bible, we have multiple translations of the Bible. Many people would consider them to be equal, but if you look at, there's one version of the Bible called the Amplified Version, and if you look at that, it's really cool because on the words that do not have a direct one-to-one ratio in either the Hebrew or the Greek to English, they will do their own expansion technique, and we'll talk about expansion techniques later in the semester, but they do their own linguistic expansion to kind of show what the meaning is. One example of that is Greek has 4 words for the word love. In English we just have love. And so if you look at the Bible, whenever it uses specific forms of love, in the Amplified Version it will kind of in parentheses show you what version of love that they're talking about there. So that's kind of a cool thing. Next we're going to talk about formal. Usually when I think of formal, I think of stage. In fact, you'll sometimes just hear that called stage interpreting, although it doesn't necessarily have to be on a stage. One thing that makes a formal situation formal is that it's a one-sided talk. And so that usually means that there's a presenter or presenters who are presenting to an audience of people, and there's not a lot of audience response, other than maybe a recitation like at a church or something like that. That would be an example. Any kind of motivational speech where a person's up on stage and then there's an audience of people. There's not a whole lot of banter back and forth because of the nature of how many people are there. And so that would be considered a formal presentation. If you're doing formal, you have to use a higher level of vocabulary, right? You're busting out your $10 words now, okay? You want to make sure that you're really using the language that's appropriate for that particular situation. Next, we're going to talk about consultative. What makes a consultative situation consultative is usually there's a person who is in a position of knowledge, and then there's a consumer who is in a position that doesn't know as much about that. So you may have a doctor who has a patient come in, and the doctor, that would be considered a consultative situation because the doctor is in a position of knowledge that the consumer doesn't know anything about or as much about. But let's say that the doctor's patient is a plumber. Well, if the doctor needs a plumber, then all of a sudden the consultative power differential changes, and now the plumber is the person who's in the position of knowledge and power, and the doctor is the one who needs to help. Does that make sense? So it doesn't always have to be one way. Anyway, another example of consultative, even though you still have somewhat of an audience, could be a classroom. There are some classrooms where I would say they're more formal, like a stadium type situation. But like our classrooms, when we're doing the face-to-face classes, are more consultative. It's a teacher who is expressing ideas. There is some banter back and forth. Usually the person who's in the position of knowledge, though, is the one who's expressing their ideas the most. And so that would still be considered a consultative situation. Usually consultative, you're going to be using, again, more formal-esque words in that register. Maybe not always up to the same level, but you're also going to, also let me back up and say with formal you're also going to be using signs that are more visible from a stage. And so, for example, there are two signs for doubt. There's doubt and there's doubt, okay? And if I were on a stage, I would probably use this sign because it's larger, you can see it. I would try to mitigate how much finger spelling I'm using because I want the audience to be able to perceive what I'm saying as best as possible, or if I am finger spelling, to make sure and pair it with meaning. Those types of things. With consultative, you're not usually going to have that distance between you, and so you're able to probably use some smaller signs, but at the same time using formal language, whether it's in English or in sign language. Casual. Casual would be anything where people are usually peers, and that could be, I don't know, a social, or the reception of a wedding, or anything where everybody's just kind of enjoying themselves. Definitely the level of language has jumped down now to a casual setting. You'll find more profanity, you'll find more slang, any of those types of things in a casual setting. You're going to see that more so because it's usually friends or people who are on an equal footing who are having a conversation. And then lastly is intimate register. And when we say intimate, I don't mean lovey-dovey. Okay, intimate means that you are on a level with someone that you guys know what you're talking about, but the people around you may not know what you're talking about. And so we often attribute this to things like inside jokes, you know, or you have friends and family members who you guys could finish each other's sentences, or you can say just one word and you both bust out laughing because you know what the reference is that you're making, again, kind of like an inside joke. And so that would be what would be considered intimate register. Since the advent of video relay, intimate register has become much more common to interpret, and it's very difficult. It's very difficult because I don't have the knowledge that these two people have with each other. And so maybe they've already established that they use a certain sign or a certain English word for things, and I may not be familiar with that. And so intimate register, out of all of the different, every kind of interpreting is difficult. My personal opinion is that intimate register is one of the most difficult registers to interpret, just because of the nature of how people communicate with each other without me knowing what's going on. I kind of feel out of the loop very often. And so intimate register could even be in a casual setting, but it's maybe people who know each other better. Again, VRS is a very common time when you would be doing intimate register. Again, it's really not about the content. It's not about it being an intimate topic, like lovey-dovey romantic type topic. It's not about that at all. It's more so about the relationship between those two people and how well they know each other. So it could be a mom and a daughter. It could be anything like that where they're just so close that they really know each other so well. And I'm an outsider trying to come into that and make sense of what it is they're communicating. I had a mom call a daughter one time, and the daughter was just a lazy signer. The daughter was deaf, and she looked at me, and on the video phone she signed this. Which, first of all, where are your facial expressions, woman? But anyway, aside from that. So I didn't know what to voice for that, so I said something like, did you buy the card? Because I didn't know what she's writing. I don't know what she was doing. And the mom, savvy mom was really smart and already knew because they know each other so well. And hearing mom says, no, I didn't buy your lottery tickets. I'm not buying you any scratch-offs anymore. Blah, 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 blah. And I just wanted to laugh so badly because I was like, wow, mom knew. Mom knew what I was saying just by the little bit of information that I was able to give her, because they were speaking in an intimate register. They knew each other well enough to know what the other person was saying. And so it can be really difficult. Anyway, that's it for register. We do have an assignment on the website using register, and so check that over. If you have any questions about it, definitely ask me about it. But other than that, that's it for this chapter. Thanks so much. Bye.